So just a couple of, one quick announcement. People may be aware the mayor will be, the mayor's budget will be certified and sent to DC Council next week. And therefore, that means that we will be in a position, they have now, the DC Council has scheduled the budget hearings. Our budget hearing is scheduled for June the 16th at 11 a.m. from 11 to 4. And so we will be able to have we're going to have another forum next week. So we'll have 2 forums in May. We're going to have another forum next week, which will be our budget forum. So we look forward to seeing everyone again next Friday at about the same time. Our first presentation today will be Bernitris.
Yes.
Parker, thank you.
Yes.
With our waiver unit, who's going to talk to us. Our individual and family support waiver is being renewed. It's now going to be in its 5th year, so it needs a renewal. And so she's going to provide some information about what will be included in that renewal. And then after that, I'm going to talk some about an amendment that we'll be doing to our VR portion of our Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act combined state plan. So I will turn it over now to Bernitris.
Charlie, so you can go ahead.
As soon as the slides are up, Bernitris will get started.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Bernitris Parker, the Medicaid Waiver Program Specialist. I will be reviewing the proposed changes to the Individual Family Support Waiver Renewal application. Next slide. The new application will be effective October 1, 2025. The proposed changes include adding telehealth service delivery and assistive technology ongoing extension service. Further proposed changes include modifying the scope of specific waiver services, staff training requirements, DSP and PDW qualifications, QIDP qualifications and requirements, the modification and removal of performance measures, and set reimbursement rates for modified services and DSP living wage rates. This is a snapshot of proposed modifications, and the highlighted information is specific to the IFS waiver. For assistive technology, we are proposing the following changes. Add the requirement for a technology plan when an assessment is not required for each assistive tech that costs under $1,000. Clarify that people 18 through 21 years of age who need assistive tech for medical or health-related needs must use the early periodic screening and diagnostic treatment service under the state plan before accessing AT services through the waiver. Next slide. Modify provider qualifications for professionals within a DDD provider organization who are not licensed assistive tech specialists, OT, PT, or speech clinicians will be required to obtain shifts enabling technology integration specialist certification to provide AT services. This requirement will ensure high standards of training and service delivery and ensure professionals are equipped the skills necessary for enabling tech assessment and integration. Also, incorporate the inclusion of clinicians whose specialty is in the area tech is recommended in the support team planning process to ensure appropriate assessments in tech are per the person's identified clinical needs and increases the person's independence. Add an extension service for assistive technology ongoing services. Modify allowable goods to allow the inclusion of 11 newer, more innovative technology categories that will replace existing covered goods to include but not limited to communication and cognitive aids, environmental control systems, and health monitoring and management devices. As technology evolves, new and emerging solutions that do not clearly fall under the 11 categories will be considered for inclusion on a case-by-case basis. This ensures flexibility in supporting the latest advancements in technology that align with the goals of enhancing independence and improving quality of life for people with disabilities. Lastly, adding subscriptions to acquire assistive technology, which refers to a model where a person can pay a recurring fee to access assistive tech rather than purchasing it outright to allow for continuous improvements without requiring reinvestment in new devices or software. Next slide. For behavioral supports, we will be adding the licensed professional art therapist credential as a qualified licensure to provide paraprofessional services and clarify Tier 3 intensive behavioral supports and correct language to include changing the reference of participants to reflect persons. For creative art therapies, annual limits for units will be implemented while removing the annual monetary cap effective January 1, 2026, as the number of allowable units decreases as the living wage increases, which can exceed the current annual cap for services. For day habilitation, clarify the staff to person ratio of 1:1 or 1:4 for day hab and 1:3 for small day hab traditional services. For employment readiness, clarify the staff to person ratio of 1:1 or 1:4 for traditional services. For in-home support services, 40 to 56 hours per week will be considered based on assessed need. If persons have significant needs and meet the criteria of support with ADLs, behavioral support, medical, health, safety and risk, and level of independence. Requested hours must be directly aligned with goals, activities, and outcomes and be proportionate to the time needed for teaching and support strategies as justified and documented in outcomes and goals in the ISP and in-home supports plan. For example, if a person's activity is laundry, 3 hours per week must be indicated in the plan for the outcome and goal associated with this activity. Next slide. Personal emergency response system will be removed as a standalone service as it is a service option under assistive technology. We will be removing the requirement for DSPs and participant-directed workers to have proof of COVID vaccinations as the requirement has been repealed, and for PDWs to have a high school diploma or GED in efforts to remove barriers for providing services and supports and participant-directed services. For participant-directed services, we are proposing the following changes. Updating training requirements for PDWs, again, that's participant-directed workers, when providing companion individualized day supports and respite services to include but not limited to CPR and first aid certification and specified DDS phase 1 trainings that are accessible via an online training platform. We're also going to modify PDW qualifications to remove barriers in providing self-directed services, and the requirements are listed on this slide. I'll let it sit for a couple of seconds so everyone can kind of scan through. Thank you. Clarify PDWs providing in-home supports are not required to provide transportation. Clarify CPR and first aid training hybrid courses are allowed when the practice and physical training skills component is in person and instructor-led and virtually through an approved online platform for the knowledge-based instructional component. Clarify staffing ratios for PDS, IDS, and companion services are 1:1. And clarify the support broker entity is responsible for informing participants of their PDS budget monthly allocation amount. Next slide. For individual directed goods and services, which we refer to as IDGS, remove the non-medical transportation requirement for individuals and vendors as transportation is not an allowable good or service. Clarify the annual cap is $2,500 per ISP year, which is inclusive of the IFS waiver $75,000 annual budget cap. and modify the requirement of IDGS to be available only to participants enrolled in the My Life, My Way program and receiving at least one of the following services, which is in-home supports, IDS one-to-one, or companion one-to-one. For remote support services, we are proposing the following changes. Add remote support staff delivery to in-home supports at a staff to person ratio of 1:6, and increase the amount of time the service can be delivered remotely from 20% and cannot be offered 100% of the time the person receives the service weekly. Modify allowable waiver services delivered through remote supports, which will focus on supporting independence and daily activities to include rehabilitation, employment readiness, supported employment, and in-home supports. Modify the definition of scheduled check-ins to focus on persons' outcomes and wellness checks, which allows for a broader scope of support that is more aligned with individual needs. And modify the requirements for the monitoring base and sensor alerts to apply exclusively to residential-based remote supports, as these services involve higher levels of consistent oversight and virtual support around daily living. Non-residential services delivered remotely often do not require the infrastructure of a monitoring base nor sensors. On-call staff and backup responders are needed in remote supports for daily living, such as in-home supports and the job coaching function of supported employment, where a person may be alone and require urgent real-time help. Modify the requirement for providers to be SHIP certified as enabling technology integration specialists, which we refer to as ETIS, for residential-based and employment-based services, as the curriculum is specifically focused on remote supports in these settings and does not cover content related to the remote delivery of other types of services. Limiting the requirement to these specific areas will align the certification with its intended scope and avoid unnecessary barriers for the other remote services. Also, the updated requirement from ETIS certified staff must be employed by a SHIP accredited service provider to ETIS certified staff must be employed by a DDS service provider, relaxes the previous requirement that the provider organization itself be SHIP accredited, in addition to ensuring their staff is responsible for oversight of remote support service delivery be ETIS certified. Now, it is sufficient for the providers to be approved by DDS as long as they have an active ETIS certified staff responsible for oversight of remote support service delivery. Lastly, limiting the remote support risk assessment and plan requirement to residential-based and employment-based services simplifies the administrative burden and targets the requirement to the most relevant service types. This ensures the risk assessment process is streamlined and applicable to the right context. We're adding telehealth services as a subcategory to remote support services and modify waiver services that will be provided through telehealth, which will cover professional, clinical, and therapeutic services to include the following services listed, and adding assistive tech assessment as a new service. Allowing AT services to be delivered remotely aims to improve assessment execution timeframes, ensuring that people receive timely evaluations and access to the necessary AT supports. Telehealth service rates will remain unchanged and will continue to align with the rates previously established for remote support services. And the SHIP ETIS certification is not required to provide telehealth services. The proposed systemic changes include the following. DDS added the following requirement to the QIDP qualifications, which is a bachelor's degree in any field with a minor in human services or an equivalent combination of education and continuing education courses in human services as approved by an accredited institution or board and who has specialized training in intellectual disabilities or 1 year of experience in working with persons with intellectual disabilities or other developmental disabilities. DDS will explore and review courses, board certified CEU topic areas, and CEU equivalency to credit hours to meet the human services minor requirement for QIDPs. As reviewed in previous slides, modify PDW training and qualification requirements. Appendix C performance measure will be removed as DDS has consistently met this measure and is tracked using other systems. add qualifications, training, competency requirements for HCBS settings criteria, and PCP development for service coordinators. Modify the performance measure of the requirement for persons to have an annual physical exam. IFS waiver recipients will be required to have an annual preventive health visits instead of annual physical examinations, as this data can be tracked by DHCF. The following Appendix G performance measures will be removed, as DDS has consistently met these measures and are tracked using other systems. For Appendix I, adjust the DSP living wage rate to 117.6% effective January 1, 2026, contingent upon funding availability. The following Appendix I performance measures will be removed, as the Department of Healthcare Finance tracks these measures using other systems. And for Appendix J, add creative arts therapy services and rates and the billing rate for assistive technology ongoing extension service. The public comment is open for anyone to review the waiver, to make comments from May 16th through June 16th. The information is posted on DDS website. To review the public notice as well as the draft waiver application. A link of the presentation will be uploaded to the website, which informs everyone about the IFS waiver renewal. And I guess I can.
So we've had one question so far, just asking if the presentation will be available. All the presentations at the forums are always available on our website, but we also have the link for our waiver application as well as this presentation on the website, and we'll put that in the chat in just a moment. Are there any other questions people have about that rather thorough review of the changes in our waiver renewal?
You might want to take the S off. I think the S fix it after HTTP. Make sure it works.
So the link to the notice
Is to the notice and a draft application, as well as everything that I covered in a more simple form. For proposed changes.
If there are no other questions, we can transition to the next presentation. I believe you have that PowerPoint as well, correct, Charlisa?
Hi, Bernie, it's Shanita. Somebody's asking in the chat for you to go over the QIDP qualifications.
I did mention to do during the presentation, but we added a bachelor's degree in any field with a minor in human services or an equivalent combination of education and continuing education courses in human services as approved by an accredited institution or board, and who has specialized training in intellectual disabilities or 1 year of experience in working with persons with intellectual disabilities or other developmental disabilities. The change in that language is specifically a bachelor's degree in any field with a minor in human services. And furthermore, we are going to explore and review courses for human services and board certified CEU topic areas and CEU equivalency to credit hours to make sure that they align with human services. So that's something that we can consider as a qualifier to be a QIDP. A bachelor's degree in any field will be okay as long as you have a minor in human services or equivalent combination of education and continuing education courses.
And I believe we will be drafting a policy that
Yes.
clarifies what the expectation would be regarding continuing education.
Yes.
Ideally to be completed by October.
Yes. in the works. Thank you, Shanika.
Of course, you're
Any-
welcome.
Any other questions? So the continuing education, as I said, will be drafting a policy that will clarify exactly what's expected regarding the continuing education courses.
Yes, and with that too includes what topics would be considered acceptable to be credit towards the QIDP qualification. So those are some things that we're still exploring, and we'll develop a policy to list specifics that will be effective by the time the waiver application is effective, which is October 1.
Okay, if there are no further questions, if we could have the next PowerPoint. So I think I've talked about this before. We have a current unified state workforce plan that's in effect from 2024 until 2027. And it's a unified plan, which includes the two programs under Department of Employment Services, the Office of the State Superintendent, Adult Education Programming, and the Vocational Rehabilitation. The Vocational Rehabilitation portion of the plan will be amended this July, because when we developed the initial plan in 2024, that plan is supposed to be informed by our comprehensive statewide needs assessment that is done every 3 years. Ours was due in 2023, so that it would be complete before the plan was done in 2024, but it was not completed until the end of fiscal year 24. And therefore, we are updating the goals and priorities portion of our VR state plan consistent with what we learned from the comprehensive statewide needs assessment, which we did a presentation on that a couple of months back. So in our next slide, please, in the amendment, we will continue to have 4 goals, which will include increasing the number of DC residents with disabilities who achieve quality employment outcomes in competitive integrated settings, improve DCRSA, the Rehabilitation Services Administration, service delivery through more efficient operations and a more effective and skilled workforce, expand and improve the quality of transition services through improved coordination with the state education agency and all local education agencies, and the implementation of pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities, and improve the coordination with other workforce development agencies providing services at the American Job Centers. So the first, under each goal, we have a number of objectives. So the first goal, increasing the number of district residents with disabilities who achieve employment outcomes, includes 5 objectives, sorry. And those include increasing outreach efforts with a particular focus on ensuring accessibility of services for people identified as underserved and unserved in our comprehensive statewide needs assessment. I will also say, in our first year, we'll be doing a lot of work on increasing outreach, because during COVID, a lot of our coordination with partner sites in the community really fell by the wayside because we were doing everything remotely. And so we are doing a renewed effort to have a very robust presence in the community at partner sites that serve people who could benefit from RSA services. Second, increase the effectiveness of outreach efforts through ongoing evaluation of the utilization of outreach sites to ensure that we're placed in the community where the need for VR services is the highest. Third, increase the number of people who complete training programs that prepare them for jobs in high demand fields, increasing the number of employment placement in these fields, and increase the number of people with intellectual disabilities and serious mental illness or substance use disorders who obtain and maintain employment through better coordination of supported employment services, both within our agency with the Developmental Disabilities Administration and with the Department of Behavioral Health. And lastly, increase the range of employment outcomes. Our second goal is improving the RSA service delivery through more efficient operations and a more skilled workforce. We have 3 objectives under this goal, which are listed on the next slide that you're about to see. And that would include continuing to provide regular training for RSA staff, retain, train, and recruit experienced and qualified VR staff and service providers to improve services to low incidence populations, including people who are blind, deafblind, have autism or other autism spectrum disorders, and revise VR policies to ensure that that all of our policies are current and consistent with the requirements under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Goal 3, expand and improve the quality of transition services through improved coordination with the state education agency, all local education agencies. Because of the number of public charter schools we have in DC, we have a high number of local education agencies that we have to coordinate with and implement pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities. And there are 3 objectives in this area, including establishing and maintaining MOAs with the Office of the State Superintendent and all local education agencies, including DC Public Schools, and then all public charter schools. Provide opportunities for work experience for students with disabilities, resulting in post-secondary education or competitive integrated employment outcomes, and provide pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities that lead to post-secondary success, including post-secondary education, job training, or competitive integrated employment. One of the measures that's tracked in the district in the school system, but really is a measure of the success of the RSA transition services, is the percentage of youth with IEPs who 1 year after exiting school are engaged in employment, job training, or post-secondary education. And so we want to keep our eye on that metric and ensure that we continue to see improvement in the district in youth success after high school. And our 4th goal is improving the coordination with other workforce development agencies, providing services at the American Job Centers. For people familiar with the Workforce Investment Council, we actually just had a meeting discussing the certification of our American Job Centers, and there really does need to be sort of renewed focus on the coordination of services at what are now 3 centers in the district. And there are 4 objectives under this goal, which include establishing data sharing agreements with DOES and OSSI that enables RSA to have access to post-case closure, wage, and education data for VR clients. We're actually making very good progress on that one. Improve coordination of services at the American Job Centers. As I said, that will be a focus of not only RSA, but all partners at the HACs. And improve coordination of services to businesses, which has been a goal of all agency partners since the beginning of WIOA, when we started meeting as a workforce system to ensure that we're coordinating our efforts with businesses in the district. Under each of these objectives, we have, how we will measure our success for each objective. This document will be posted. We will be publishing this to let people know, to provide notice of the proposed amendment in our plan. And that will include all the detail, including the performance metrics, the time frame for each of them, which is and will be available on our website. And that's just the general overview. So if there are any questions about that or comments? Okay, well, seems that we'll have a rather brief meeting today. We have one new message here. Let me just see. All of these will be posted on our website. Crystal's provided here the link where you can find all the presentations, and they're posted on our website by the Wednesday following our community forum. As I said, our next forum will actually be in a week when we will do a presentation on our budget. As people may notice, we're here in the room, and people are welcome to be here in the room next week when we have the conversation about our FY26 budget. Very happy that that has passed, or that has been transmitted, will be transmitted by next week to the council, and we will give people enough information then. That'll be on the 30th. People will have 2 weeks to digest that information so that people can have an opportunity to testify at our budget hearing on June the 16th. And I believe that's all I have for today. So if there are no other comments from people, I'd like to recognize that we are coming up on Memorial Day. Thoughts of people who may have lost loved ones on behalf of this country. So enjoy your weekend, and we will see everyone back next week.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.